You know, for a full century, one name has been completely wrapped up with the world's highest peak and its greatest mystery, George Mallory. Today, we're going to dig into the story of the man, the mountain, and the one question that still hangs in the thin air of the Himalayas. All right, let's get into it. So, this is it. This is our stage, Mount Everest. Back in the 1920s, people called it the third pole. It was like the last great unconquered spot on the entire planet. And it wasn't just some physical challenge, it was a symbol of human ambition. For George Mallory, it became a total obsession. And this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? In June of 1924, Mallory and his climbing partner, Andrew Irvine, just vanished, right near the summit. So did they make it to the top, a whole 29 years before Hillary and Tenzing? Or did they die in a heroic but ultimately failed attempt? Now get this, the timescale here is just mind-boggling. They disappeared in 1924, right? But Mallory's body, it wasn't found until 1999. Think about that. 75 years passed. And in all that time, the mystery didn't fade. It just grew bigger, becoming one of the greatest legends in all of mountaineering. So when his body was discovered in 99, you'd think that would be the end of it. But really, it just opened up a whole new set of questions. To really understand what could have happened up there on that mountain, we have to understand the man himself. I mean, what was driving him? What was he really capable of? To figure that out, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning. Okay, so here are the basics, the facts on paper. George Herbert Lee Mallory, born in England, became a school teacher, but was also this incredibly gifted mountaineer. He was a key player in all three of the first British expeditions to Everest, which of course led to his death when he was just 37. But the real story? Well, it's so much more interesting than that. So who was the man behind the myth? Was he just some adrenaline junkie, or was there something else going on? His early life gives us some really fascinating clues. This, right here, just perfectly sums up the two sides of Mallory. On the one hand, you have this church, where his dad was the rector. He climbed the outside of it when he was just 7 years old. But on the other hand, you have Magdalene College, Cambridge, where he was surrounded by Britain's sharpest minds. He was this amazing combination of raw physical talent and a seriously brilliant intellect. And apparently, the guy had this incredible presence. This quote is from Lytton Strachey, who was a big deal in the famous Bloomsbury Group of artists and thinkers. It just shows you the kind of impression Mallory left on people. He wasn't some simple outdoorsman, he was fascinating to even the most brilliant people of his time. And just look at his circle of friends. We're not talking about other climbers here. We're talking about people who literally shaped the 20th century, the poet Rupert Brooke, the economist John Maynard Keynes. And this is the key thing to get. His drive to climb Everest wasn't just about athletic glory. It came from a mind that was complex, brilliant, and totally connected to the big ideas of the day. But, charisma and a big brain don't get you up a mountain. So how did this Cambridge intellectual turn into one of the absolute best climbers of his generation? Well, his real training ground was the Alps. This is where he really honed his skills. And he wasn't just repeating the classic routes. He actually made 4 first ascents of his own. He also got to the top of Mont Blanc, which gave him that crucial experience at high altitude that he would need later on. And back home in Britain, the guy was just relentless. He mastered the icy, treacherous winter walls in Scotland, and then he focused on pure rock climbing, pioneering brand new, really hard routes in Wales and the Lake District. See, he wasn't just following trails, he was blazing them. Routes that he established over 100 years ago still have his name on them today. So to give you an idea of just how good he was, let's look at this number. Using today's modern climbing grades, a route he established in Wales way back in 1911 is rated a 5.9 to 5.10A. Let me tell you, that is a seriously difficult and technical rock climb, even with all the fancy gear we have today. And here is why that is so important. The second step, which is one of the most famous and difficult parts of the route Mallory and Irvine were on, is rated 5.9. So what this tells us is that over a decade before he even set foot on Everest for the last time, Mallory was already climbing at the exact technical level needed to get past its toughest obstacle. He absolutely had the skills. After serving in World War I, Mallory went back to his life as a teacher, but something had shifted. The war had changed him, and a new, all-consuming challenge was about to appear on the horizon. His whole Everest story really happens in 3 parts. First, in 1921, it was all about reconnaissance, just finding a possible way up the mountain. Then, in 1922, they made the first real, all-out attempt on the summit. And finally, there was 1924, the one he didn't come back from. So here they are, the pioneers from 1921. That's Mallory way over on the right. These guys were literally mapping the unknown, walking off the edge of the known world. And it was Mallory who ultimately found the route up the North Col that became the standard way to climb the mountain for decades. The 1922 attempt was, well, it was a mix of incredible highs and just devastating lows. On one hand, Mallory's team set a new world altitude record, getting so close to the summit, and they did it without supplemental oxygen. He also had this moment of pure heroism where he single-handedly used his ice axe to stop 3 of his teammates from falling to their deaths. But the whole expedition ended in absolute tragedy when an avalanche killed 7 porters, and that was something that really, really weighed on him. This quote, it gives us such a powerful look inside his head. For Mallory, climbing was never about conquering a mountain. It was an internal battle, a test of his own limits. The real enemy wasn't the rock in the ice, it was himself. And that brings us right back to 1924. Even with the tragedy of the last expedition, and with a family back home that he loved, Mallory just felt like he had to go back. He had unfinished business with that mountain. Right before he left, a reporter in New York asked him the big question, why? Why do you want to climb Mount Everest? And his answer, just 3 simple words, became legendary. The perfect expression for why humans do impossible things. Because it's there. And this is the last concrete piece of the puzzle we have. The expedition's geologist, a man named Noel Odell, was looking up and saw 2 tiny black dots high up on the summit ridge. He was sure it was Mallory and Irvine, and he said they were moving upwards, going strong for the top, just a few hundred feet from their goal. And then the clouds swirled in, and they were gone, never seen alive again. They were so close. That final ridge, that last push to the very roof of the world. What happened in those next few hours after they disappeared into the clouds? Well, that's the question that has fueled 100 years of debate. And so, in the end, this is what we're left with. Was their last climb a tragic failure, falling just short of the ultimate prize? Or, if they did make it to the summit before they died, does that make it the greatest, most romantic, and most tragic success in the entire history of exploration? The clues found on Mallory's body in 1999 gave us some hints, but no definitive answers. And maybe the true power of his story is that we will never really know for sure.